Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Great. Good morning, everybody. It's absolute pleasure to be part of this gathering and to share a small part of my story. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to sort of being the first speaker in a TEDx conference. The advantage is that if the talk is terrible, hopefully by the end of the last talk, you would have forgotten all about me. But the disadvantage is that if you like some of my ideas and you like my talk, you would have forgotten those also by the end of the last talk. Anyhow, let me get started. I come from a family of educators going back to almost 3 generations ago. But actually the spark that led me to do the work that I currently do, which is ensuring that all children in this country receive access to an excellent quality education, actually happened here. The picture you see here is a picture I took a couple of years ago. Those are my children, and in the background you see Lutz Convent High School. Lutz is actually one of the most prestigious schools in Surat. I grew up in Surat in the early 90s. And I studied in a government school where the quality of education was not very great, but it was the only thing that my parents could afford at that time. Lutz Convent High School was the most prestigious and the best known school in Surat, very well known for its quality of education. And my mother, who was a teacher, was hell-bent on ensuring that my sister and I get admission into Lutz. There was a problem, of course, not just the fees which were high, but Lutz demanded every parent to make a donation to the school to ensure that the child get admission. My mother, not one to give up, for an entire year, every single week she would go and meet the principal of that school and request, almost beg her to give admission to my sister and me. In fact, I remember there are times when my mother would stand outside the school because the watchman would not allow her to go inside and meet the principal. After an entire year of my mother doing this, week after week after week, the principal, I think, finally frustrated my mother, said, bring your daughters in for an entrance exam and let me see if they're worthy of admission into Lutz school. So my sister and I gave the entrance test. Surprisingly, we did quite well. But there was still the problem of the donation. And my mother immediately jumped in and she said, Sister Rosemary, which was the name of the principal, she said, Sister Rosemary, I will work for free as a teacher in your school if you give my daughters admission. That, of course, sealed the deal for the principal who was looking for a chemistry teacher, and my mother was one. For the next 5 years, my sister and I studied at Lutz Convent High School, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that my life path currently is completely different because of the education I received. And the reason I'm standing here in front of you was what Lutz did for me in those 5 years. Whether it was the quality of education, the great teachers I had, the access to opportunities and extracurriculars, my life today is fundamentally different. My ability to speak in English, all of it I credit back to Lutz. Very early on in life, I decided that I wanted to do for others what Lutz had done for me, to ensure that every child in this country, irrespective of their economic background, irrespective of where they come from, have access to excellent quality education and have access to opportunities. I've spent 14 years doing this work, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my learnings from the past 14 years with the help of 4 short stories and talk about what my big learnings and shifts in perspective have been. My first story is about my friend Arvind. Arvind and I taught in a government school in Chennai during the 2nd year of my Teach for India fellowship. I had been teaching in the school for a couple of months when Arvind joined the fellowship. Within a week of Arvind joining the fellowship, one of his children, Mani, lost his father to alcoholism. Now, this is a 9-year-old child and his 4-year-old sister who have lost their father to alcoholism. Mani, who was anyway not very regular to school, completely stopped coming to school after this incident. Arvind, who was a new teacher, who had never lived in India, he had studied abroad, and he had come to India just for the Teach for India fellowship, he could barely speak the local language. For the next 1 month, every single day, Arvind would come to school at 9 o'clock, teach children from 9 to 4. At 4 o'clock, he would go to Mani's house and spend 2 hours with Mani, sitting with him, talking with him, laughing with him, crying with him, and making sure that he knew what had happened in school that day. When I joined and started doing this work 14 years ago, I thought the best way to get quality education to all children is to ensure order and discipline, to ensure that children stay disciplined and use that discipline to move further ahead in life. One of my biggest shifts in perspective after doing this work for 14 years and being with students and educators has been that far more important than order and discipline is the ability to connect and care for another human being. Mani today is doing excellently well in life, is in college, is in his final year of college, and will now be getting a job, not just because of the excellent quality education that Arvind provided, but because how Arvind cared so deeply and stood by him in times when money needed him the most. My second story is about my friend Nisha. Nisha and I taught, in the first year, Nisha and I taught together in a school in Mumbai. The school that I taught in didn't have money for a school building. So what they basically did was they rented these small rooms, which are called chawls in Mumbai. They rented these small rooms, sort of 6 x 6 feet rooms, where 20 or 30 children are there. And Nisha and my classrooms, we taught 4th and 5th grade, were right next to each other in the chawl. Now, this is Mumbai you're talking about. The Mumbai rains, as all of you know, are absolutely terrible for a couple of months, from June to like September. And the roof of our classroom would constantly leak and water would be dripping into the classroom. The situation in Nisha's classroom was far worse than mine. And the trustee of the school didn't have money to fix the roof. So he had a temporary solution. He said, I'll take a big tarpaulin sheet, the blue tarpaulin sheet that you see. I will tie it below the roof. And all the water that gets dripped from the roof will get collected in that tarpaulin sheet. And Nisha and I, we said, fine, as long as there's a temporary solution. Eventually, the inevitable happened. One fine day, the tarpaulin got so full of water, the entire tarpaulin, along with liters of water, came crashing down on the children and on Nisha, leaving the entire class completely drenched. I want all of you to take a moment to think about what you would have done in that moment if you were in Nisha's place. I know what I would have done. I would have immediately sent all the children back home. I would have gone to the trustee. I would have complained to him saying, here's the kind of school that you expect me to teach in. I'm not going to be coming to school today till you fix that roof. And I would have walked home. Here's what Nisha did. Within 5 minutes of that incident, she had got all the kids out. She had made them sit in the corridor outside the school. So there is, basically how it works is there's a corridor and there are 4 or 5 chawls together. So you can see that's the corridor. This here is my classroom. She got the whiteboard out of her classroom. She hung it outside the door of my classroom, and she started teaching them as if nothing had happened. The time gap between the incident happening and Nisha starting to teach the children like this was about 5 or 7 minutes. That's the amount of learning children lost. And for 3 weeks, Nisha continued to teach like this. Outside in the Mumbai rains, the kids would wear raincoats and sit there, and outside the classroom, she taught like this till the trustee fixed it. All my life, and I've been an engineering student as well, all my life I've tried to find ways to do things that are easy. If there are foreign author textbooks, I've not read them when I did my engineering. I've read the local authors because it is easy. When I was working in an IT company, I would always try to see what is the easiest way to finish my work so that I could relax. I think a huge shift in perspective that has happened for me over the past 14 years, and I keep telling young people as they finish college, and even during college, is do things that are hard. Do things that challenge you, that make you cry, that are really messy and that need solving, because that's where your biggest learning and your leadership development is going to come from. So that's been a huge shift of perspective from wanting to do things that are easy to doing things that really push me and challenge me. My third story is actually about my student Alisha. So the first picture that you see was taken in 2011 when I was a teacher and Alisha was a 5th grade student. Alisha was the naughtiest child in my classroom. Legend has it that she broke the teeth of a few boys in my classroom because they were annoying her. And she would absolutely have no patience for coming to school, for sitting in class, for sitting for 3 hours to do an exam. As a teacher, I constantly worried. I constantly worried about this child, what she would do, how she would better the circumstances of her life, and beat the odds of having an alcoholic father and a mother who was a fish seller and worked about 16 hours a day and lived in one of the most violent communities in Mumbai. I finished that year with Alisha. I continued to be in touch with her on and off. I found out that she had finished school, that she was doing college during COVID. 2 months ago, Alisha sent me an invite for her wedding. So I went to her wedding, and this was the second picture that you see was taken about a few days after her wedding, which I attended in Mumbai. And I found out that Alisha was a teacher. And this was absolutely not the future I'd imagined for Alisha. In my worst nightmare, she had become like a local Mumbai Dawn. And in my dream, given her passion and drive and excitement, I thought she'd be a sports person for the country, given how much passion she had. And I said, Alisha, and she was a teacher for special needs children. So I said, Alisha, why have you become a teacher, and that too for special need kids? And she's in a typical Tapori Mumbai style. She's like, Didi, when you became my teacher, you were the only teacher who really cared for me and didn't think of me as a nuisance. All the other teachers, when I didn't come to school, they would be happy. But when I didn't come to school, you came to my house, you pulled me out and made sure I was in school every day. that time itself, I decided that I wanted to be a teacher, and I wanted to be a teacher for children whom everybody else had given up on and everybody else thought was a nuisance. I remember being so moved and so overwhelmed at that moment, thinking that the small seeds that I had planted for a year that I taught in Mumbai with Alisha had resulted in these things, right? As a person, by nature, I'm a person who's very fast. If you see the way I walk, if you see the way I talk, see the way I do things, I like action, I like to keep things moving, and I like things that happen quickly. One of my shifts in perspective after doing this work and being with children for 14 years has been that change takes time. Change that is enduring, change that is lasting, takes time, and we need to have the patience to stick it out and see what happens to all the seeds we have planted. And even if I feel like all the seeds that we plant, even if you're not there, they are going to bear fruits. So having faith in the process has been a huge learning. My last story is actually about my children. These are my 7-year-old twins. They're called Sahana and Anirudh. And I feel like they push me, challenge me, love me, and amaze me in ways that nobody else has ever done in my life. So every day in their lunchbox, I give a small dessert or a sweet as part of their lunchbox. Just to make sure, that after they finish their meal, they have something sweet to eat. One day after school, Sahana comes running to me and she says, Amma, there's a boy in my classroom, and he takes, as soon as I open my lunchbox, he takes my sweet and he eats it and he runs away. And I said, oh my God, let me just immediately call your teacher and complain to her that there is this boy in class who's doing this. And I went to pick my phone, and she stopped me, and she looked at me very strangely, and she said, Amma, what is there to complain in this? The only reason I told you this was so that from tomorrow you can give me 2 sweets so that I can share with him, and I can also eat. And I remember being absolutely flabbergasted and thinking, why did I not think like that? Why did I not have empathy and compassion for another human being? And my immediate reaction was to complain. And I think my children and all the children and students that I've taught have pushed me in ways that I cannot even begin to describe. And my last sort of thought and idea and shift in perspective, and there's one thought that I would like to leave all of you, is the shift from teaching children, to actually learning from and building with children. And I heard a lot of it in the talks that ma'am and sir did before me, was how can we give the power to the students, right? How can we make sure that students are empowered? Because when we empower children, the kind of change that they make is absolutely unbelievable. And I think one idea that I would like to leave all of you with is that kids are change makers. We always ask children, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think the question we need to ask them is, who do you want to be today, and what do you want to do today? Because I believe kids are change makers, and our role as adults is just to ensure that they have a platform, and they have a platform to really excel, and we give them the opportunities to help them realize their true potential. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.